Howdy folks. So here we are making a little stop at the Slyder farm, which is a bit off in the distance. And we got not one sign but two for you. So I'll kind of read them out. They're pretty short. I'm familiar with the story. First we have A Ride to Death, and this is the story of Judson Kilpatrick and Elon Farnsworth. Battle of Gettysburg was nearly over. 2 miles north, a Confederate attack known as Pickett's Charge had been driven back, but the southern position here around the Slyder farm remained strong. Union General Judson Kilpatrick's cavalry, ordered to attack the enemy's right and rear, rode to this location. He ordered General Farnsworth to lead a charge from the wooded hill behind you across the fields to your front. The uneven terrain, with large boulders, as we know, fences and woodlots, was unsuitable for a cavalry charge. Farnsworth objected to this hopeless mission, but Kilpatrick insisted. Farnsworth, with 300 troopers, charged over rocks and through timber under deadly fire. Captain H.C. Parsons, 1st Vermont Cavalry, said, each man felt that he was summoned to ride to death. Farnsworth's charge was a disaster. As we know, Farnsworth did not make it, and the shame of it is, he'd been general for just 5 days before the Battle of Gettysburg. Well, I guess maybe three days before the Battle of Gettysburg. As we know, guys, we're fairly close now to, can't see it from here, but, you know, the area of Little Round Top and Devil's Den is just kind of behind these trees here. And as we know, it's strewn with boulders. So as you can imagine, the Confederates who were already lodged in here had an absolute advantage. You know, they could hide behind the trees, hide behind the boulders, and just, you know, kind of pop up, right? And it was terribly unsuitable, if you think about it, for a cavalry charge. I'm not sure if they had carbines or not, but I don't think it would have mattered much. Moving on to the, and one other point I want to make is, even though Pickett's charge, as the sign said, had finished, and it seemed as if the Confederates were whooped, and they were, Robert E. Lee was just a stubborn guy, you know what I mean? Some folks may or may not know that he did not leave the battlefield on the 3rd. And the same was true at the Battle of Antietam. You know, he remained on the battlefield for about a day after, you know, many may have rolled out, and after it seemed pretty inevitable that it was to be a complete Union victory, or close to a complete Union victory. There's always the fact that you know, Meade kind of hesitated in chasing down Lee back across the Potomac for different reasons, which I've gotten into, and I'm not totally defending Meade, but I'm not also totally attacking him either. Anyways, so here we are from farm to battlefield. This is, of course, basically talking about the same incident, but from the civilian standpoint. The 75-acre farm was home to John and Catherine Slyder and 3 of their children. The farm, seen in the distance, out yonder, it's kind of hard for you to see from here, included a 2-story stone house, a double-log barn, summer kitchen, and other buildings. Heeding a warning from Union soldiers, the Slyders left their farm. Smart move. Federal sharpshooters hid in and among the outbuildings, harassing and delaying the enemy's advance. So, of course, this is 4 p.m., and this is just around the time of the peach orchard, then the wheat field, and so on and so forth. Thousands of soldiers overran the property, turning farm field to battlefield. The Slyders returned to find their farm a shambles and their home a temporary aid station. Destroyed crops, orchards, and livestock devastated this hard-working family. 2 months later, having lost everything, they moved to Ohio. And I think this point bears mentioning because, as I mentioned at other farm areas on the Gettysburg battlefield, it certainly had to leave a sour taste in some folks' mouth in the wake of and in the aftermath. Of course, as we know, it was always a mixed situation, and everybody in the area didn't support the Union, but the majority did. Before the war. After the war, it kind of has to be assumed that at least a fair number of folks who were run out, who had all their property destroyed, their barns burned, their livestock killed, and were now living amongst fields of carnage, fields of dead soldiers and shallow graves, and with disease seeping in. It has to be assumed that some folks' taste for the war may have slackened, may have soured, right? I mean, again, this is one of those things where you have to try and put yourself in the shoes of these people at the time. Again, I'm not talking about 1861. I'm talking about July the 3rd, July the 4th, 1863, and then the months, weeks and months afterward. If you had just lost everything, even for a noble cause, you lost everything. Your whole life had just been shattered. As I've mentioned in other videos, many farmers put their claims in, and I think it's safe to say that a handful were honored, while many more were not. And after having everything ruined, and then after you putting a claim in that was not honored, you didn't get anything in return for all the losses that you incurred having hosted the battle, right? Or hosted a portion of the battle, and not being compensated for it. How would you feel? Then your family has to move a state or two or three away. This may have not made you firmly against the Union and firmly in favor of the Confederacy by any means, but it may have led you to have somewhat of an anti-war sentiment. Now, of course, as we know, that was one of the main political goals of General Robert E. Lee, was to stir up and increase anti-war and sentiment with the northern incursions, and indeed that's what often happened in many cases. But I think that despite it being a political goal, it was also a natural effect, right? Again, put yourself in their shoes. Like I said, you may have still been in favor of the goals of the Union, but you may have absolutely lost your taste for the war, and you may have yourself desired a quick end to it, one way or the other, whether it be militarily and strategically, or whether it be some kind of truce. One way or the other, I bet that many of you would have wanted this to end very quickly. And in fact, of course, as we know, there were many anti-war protests which followed in the wake of Gettysburg. And I think it's easy for some people to say, oh, well, those darn turncoats and those wimps, and you know what, you still have to stand firm and support the Union. It's easier for us to say this in our armchairs, but if you put yourself in their shoes and you just lost everything, you weren't compensated for it, and again, you possibly had to move back home or move many states away, that's not just an inconvenience, that's a total change to your life in the negative. And I think this point just bears mentioning. Glad the glass isn't any higher over here yet, because some of you may have seen in my community post, I was wading through the tall grass around Plum Run, and caught my first tick of the year. And while it was the first of this season, it won't be the last, because nothing will stop me from enjoying the places I love, whether it be here on the battlefield of Gettysburg, or taking a good hike through the mountains, or mucking my way through the marshes of the wetlands around the Chesapeake. You're looking at one happy guy with things warming up. We had a low last night of about 35. We're already at about 50, and so I've removed the jacket. I'm back in my hoodie. By the way, giving a little nod to Idiom Brewing in Frederick, Maryland. But the sweatshirt is soon gonna be gone, and the t-shirt might be too. So anyhow, guys, hope you enjoyed the little tour of the Slyder farm and the story about Farnsworth and all. And we'll see you again soon.